I recently shot 2 packs of Polaroid's new Duochrome green film, and in the mighty words of Polaroid themselves, it's certainly not for everyone. Hello there, my precious little eggies, welcome back to the channel. In recent years, Polaroid hasn't exactly been known for having the most stable and reliable film. You can see my plethora of Polaroid videos if you want to see the receipts to that claim. But chances are, if you've shot Polaroid anything in recent years, you've come across an issue or 2, or 3, or 4, or 5, or 6, or 7, or 8, or 9. I was actually really excited to hear about Polaroid putting out Duochrome green. Green is one of my favorite colors. Then I found out it's less stable and predictable than Polaroid's normal films.
Oh, my favorite!
You know it's gonna be good when they call it a challenge. They're actually selling this film at a reduced price and not giving refunds. That's quite a vote of confidence if I've ever heard one. I shot most of my first pack of film at the Stony Point Music Festival while watching my friends jam out. Lords of the Sun and the Franco Cascio brothers, check them out, gotta rep the Bronx music scene here, you know, links in the description. I started off by shooting this telephone pole between the trees here. I'm a simple man when it comes to film. I see a telephone pole, a gas station, a car headlight, and I'm gonna shoot it. And this is actually very convenient for you guys because I had a previous pack of film in my Polaroid Now Plus so we can see side by side the color I-type film with the Duochrome green. Right away I noticed that the highlights were completely eviscerated on the Duochrome green film. The settings between those 2 photos were identical. No flash, exposure compensation was right in the middle. Here's a little interesting aside. On the day I shot this, I was able to see the telephone pole. I scanned these about a week or so after I shot them, and it seems like in that time the images got a little bit brighter. Do I have a scientific explanation as to why that happened?
No.
But if you're shooting this film, definitely keep it in mind. This shouldn't come as a massive surprise to me, especially considering that I've shot numerous versions of Duochrome, even some of the Impossible Project stuff. All of the Duochromes I've used have been susceptible to overexposing easily. Side note, the Impossible Project stuff, it smells kinda weird. Not that I'm huffing film or anything, but I just thought you should know that. So with that in mind, I decided I would underexpose most of my Duochrome green shots in an attempt to preserve the highlights. I decided to take a couple of photos before the bands went on. I underexposed these shots and I still couldn't get the highlights quite right. These 2 shots also got very splotchy from the colored dye. This is something that Polaroid actually warned about on the website, and it's not the first time I've seen it either. In fact, I've seen this splotchiness before on the Duochrome blue film. I was gonna make a video on it,
But I didn't.
Wish it was a better story than that. Finally, it was time for my boys to play.
Does it hurt?
Sorry, Brian, I'm gonna go ahead and talk over you. I took 2 shots of Lords of the Sun in the stage truck thingy. They still came out pretty bright, which really surprised me considering they were shaded. This film is truly a Polaroid anomaly. As we got closer to the sunset, I shot the water and the boat nearby. I'm pretty happy with the way these shots turned out. The contrast is definitely a little bit more pronounced, which is something that I'm a big fan of. Okay, that show was rad, but it's a new day. I was driving and I came across this sunset, so obviously I had to fulfill my destiny. I did the only logical thing. I shot this beautiful sunset on a green film that doesn't do highlights well. I did, however, finish that first pack of film and I decided to waste a shot in a little experiment with the second. Same shot, same settings. But this time, I held an ND filter to the lens. It's interesting, it's a little creepy.
It's spooky.
It almost looks like some Fallout shit. Interestingly, the shadows got a little hazy on the edges of the frame. I kinda like it. We've come to the inevitable point in the video where I shoot some gas stations. I wanted to shoot this one mainly because the gas prices around here are just so reasonable that I thought it would be cool to preserve this moment in time. The sun was below the horizon for this shot, so I left the exposure compensation right in the middle. And happy times, the sign was completely blown out, so that's always fun. The next day I decided to go out for gas station redemption. To me, overcast days seem to be ideal for this film. It seems like Duochrome green has a tough time with high dynamic range scenes, and the flatter, less bright light from a cloudy day gives the film a little bit of an easier time. For my next trick, I shot the corner of this building. And if I had to describe this, this would be mid-tones the photo. There's no There's no contrast here. Not in love with it. I finished off the second pack of film while running some errands. The first stop was at my favorite coffee spot, Grounds, not sponsored, of course. I very intelligently forgot to get B-roll of the outside of the building, so yeah, this is all I have for you. I'm pretty satisfied with how this photo came out. It was at this point that I decided I wanted to experiment a little bit more. It was time to use the red filter. I've discussed what these filters do in a separate video, so you guys can go check that out after this one. But my hope is that the red filter will kind of darken out the sky a little bit in these photos. Unfortunately, it does have the cutout in the middle, so we won't have the effect pronounced all the way through the frame, but the corners at least should expose better. I went for a diner shot and my theory was not exactly proven correct. Still a little bit too hot for my taste. But I shot this telephone pole right after, and I gotta say, the red filter really did the trick here. If you look in the corners of the frame, the vignette looks really great. That exposure is awesome. If only I had a red filter that covered the entire frame, then we'd truly be in the game. And unfortunately, in my opinion anyway, you can see a lot of that chemical splotchiness in the middle of the frame here. Not super in love with that. Might be someone's taste, but not quite mine. I think the red filter has a lot of potential to be awesome with this film. If we side by side these last two photos, honestly, I think the issue with the diner one was more of a light meter issue. I think the camera just didn't read the scene properly, and that's why it's so overexposed. For the last shot of the pack, I decided to go for one that I haven't shot in quite a while. Now, the OGs in the channel when I was living in the Bronx probably remember seeing this photo all the time, but the drugstore. Unfortunately, it wasn't nighttime, so we didn't have the neon glow going, but it's a channel classic. I'm happy with the exposure of this photo. I'm not happy with the fact that this frame is kind of busted and it didn't go edge to edge, but it kind of works for the shot. I'll just keep saying that to myself as a cope so I can sleep at night. I really like the idea of duochrome green. How well it works really depends heavily on your subject and the timing though. It's kind of like night vision.
Going dark.
You're only seeing the greens and blacks, and looking directly into light sources is not the best idea. Shooting in slightly darker scenarios than I normally would with a Polaroid really threw me off. It is a fun and interesting challenge, but it's also not particularly versatile, and it's very easy to end up with a box full of duds. But I'd love to hear what you think. You can show me on Instagram, you can join the Discord, link is in the description below. This video is now over, bye.
Like and subscribe. Sweet Loop Photography. Dumb man.